There's a moment most of us don't notice when it first begins. Not when someone criticizes us, not when someone misunderstands us, but when we start adjusting our lives because of it. It's subtle. You hesitate before posting something. You rethink an idea you were excited about. You soften your voice in a meeting. You stop sharing something personal, not because it was wrong, but because someone might talk. At some point in adulthood, usually somewhere between 30 and 45, you begin to understand something uncomfortable. Reputation feels fragile, and noise spreads faster than truth. But here's the real question. How much of your life are you quietly redesigning just to avoid becoming someone else's topic of conversation? And, even more important, when did other people's opinions start carrying more weight than your own direction? This isn't about ignoring feedback. It's about understanding the difference between constructive truth and destructive noise. And if you don't draw that line clearly, noise will start shaping your life, not loudly, but slowly. When rumors become louder than reality. Several years ago, I worked with someone. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was steady, reliable, not flashy, the kind of person who did his work well and went home quietly. One quarter, a project under his supervision failed, not dramatically, but noticeably. It wasn't entirely his fault. It was a mix of bad timing, unclear leadership, and unrealistic deadlines. But in corporate environments, nuance rarely travels as fast as blame. Within weeks, small comments began circulating. Maybe he's not leadership material. He doesn't seem decisive enough. Maybe the promotion was premature. Nothing formal, nothing written, just hallway conversations. You know the kind. And here's what changed. Daniel didn't defend himself aggressively. He didn't confront anyone. Instead, he started shrinking. He stopped proposing new ideas. He avoided leading major initiatives. He second-guessed decisions he once would have made confidently. Not because he lacked ability, but because he became aware of the narrative forming around him. And the strange thing is, the narrative gained power, not because it was true, but because he began responding to it. Within a year, he left the company. Not fired, not pushed out. He just slowly stopped believing in his own position. Here's what that taught me. Rumors rarely destroy careers overnight. They erode confidence quietly. And if you let them, they make you rewrite your own identity. But there's another story. Around the same time, another manager, Elena, faced something similar. A team conflict escalated, and her name was attached to it unfairly. People talked, and she knew. But instead of shrinking, she did something simple. She kept working. She documented her decisions clearly. She communicated more transparently. She didn't over-defend. She didn't overreact. She just stayed steady. 6 months later, the noise disappeared. Because noise rarely survives consistency. Here's the difference. Daniel internalized the narrative. Elena outlasted it. And I think that's where maturity begins. Not when you avoid criticism, but when you learn not to let it redefine you. So maybe the real question is, when someone talks about you, do you start adjusting who you are? Or do you stay anchored in what you know is true? The cost of protecting your image. There's a story that circulates often in American business circles. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks in 2008, the company was struggling. Sales were falling. The brand had drifted. Critics were loud. Some analysts said the company had expanded too aggressively. Some blamed leadership. Some questioned whether Starbucks had lost its soul. If Schultz had focused on defending reputation, he might have spent his energy responding to headlines. Instead, he closed 7,100 stores for a day to retrain baristas on making espresso properly. It was a bold move, financially risky, publicly exposed, but it wasn't about quieting critics. It was about correcting direction. There's something powerful about that, because here's the trap many adults fall into between 35 and 45. We start protecting image more than integrity. We avoid taking necessary risks because we don't want to invite commentary. We don't pivot careers because people might question our stability. We don't leave unhealthy environments because someone might call us inconsistent. But protecting your image can slowly cost you your growth. And I've felt that personally. There was a time when I stayed in a professional situation longer than I should have, not because it was right, but because leaving would look unstable. It would raise questions. What happened? Why now? Couldn't you handle it? And so I stayed. Until one day I realized something uncomfortable. I was sacrificing internal alignment for external perception. And that's when you begin losing yourself. Not dramatically, but quietly. The truth is, people will talk whether you stay or leave, whether you rise or fall, whether you succeed or pivot. Noise is constant. Your direction is not. So the mature question becomes, am I making this decision out of clarity or out of fear of commentary? Because when fear guides your choices, noise is in control. Learning to separate feedback from projection. One of the most misunderstood skills in adulthood is learning how to receive criticism without absorbing projection. There's a difference. Constructive feedback sharpens you. Projection burdens you. In 2018, actor Keanu Reeves was quietly ridiculed in Hollywood circles for years before his career resurgence. He wasn't loud. He wasn't aggressively branding himself. He wasn't chasing attention. He just worked. And for a long time, people underestimated him. But something interesting happened. Public opinion shifted, not because he fought it, but because consistency eventually revealed character. What stayed steady outlasted what was said. And that's something I think about often, because not all criticism deserves reaction. Sometimes people speak from their own insecurity, sometimes from jealousy, sometimes from misunderstanding. And if you absorb every comment, you'll end up carrying emotions that don't belong to you. I once received a harsh professional critique. At first, it felt personal, but when I separated it, I realized something. Part of it was useful, part of it was projection. The useful part improved me. The projection part, I let go. That's maturity, not defensiveness, not indifference. Discernment. And discernment requires calm. If your mind is reactive, everything feels like truth. If your mind is steady, you can filter. And when you filter well, noise loses its authority. The quiet strength most people never see. By midlife, most of us realize something humbling. You can't control what people say. You can't prevent misunderstanding. You can't silence every rumor. But you can decide what shapes your identity. The strongest adults I've met aren't the ones without criticism. They're the ones who learn to keep moving without letting noise set the direction. They don't over-explain. They don't overreact. They don't chase every opinion. They stay aligned. And alignment is quiet power. So if you've been feeling the weight of other people's commentary, maybe pause and ask yourself, is this helping me grow, or is it slowly shrinking me? Not every voice deserves space in your decisions, and not every narrative deserves your energy. Protect your integrity, protect your direction, and let time handle the noise, because it usually does. Take care of your clarity. It's worth more than reputation. And if this season feels heavy, I hope you move through it steadily, with health, perspective, and a quieter kind of strength.